And we are back with the Legacy Tour Huntsville Round 5. Feature match has Jordan O'Hara playing Death and Taxes versus Wesley Stewart on Mud. I'm your host, Zachary Cook. I'm joined by my co-host, Drake Sasser.
Glad to be here.
All right. Now, what do you think? How do you feel about this matchup?
It feels very, very good for Death and Taxes. They have Aether Vials, a lot of the mana constriction in like Chalices and Transfer they can kind of play around. They have Wastelands, which are, as I said before, typically very good against the Mud deck. They have a lot of Soul Lands, stuff like that. You can really...
They're all non-basic,
catch them off. Yeah, exactly. And so they have a lot of, low-to-the-ground cards anyway. And they also have a couple 3-drops, so even Transfer doesn't hurt that bad if they have to do it. I don't know. I think they should be able to lock the Mud deck out of the game pretty quickly. And so I'd imagine it's pretty good for Death and Taxes. That's not saying Mud can't win. Mud's creatures are just larger, so if they start resolving some of their, larger threats and just, start swinging in, eventually they're just going to win the race.
Another thing worth noting here is that one of the pivotal creatures, at least from my experience, for Death and Taxes is Mother of Runes. And it does literal nothing against Mud. None of their creatures are colored, so you can't use Mother of Runes as the ultra protection effect that Death and Taxes normally does. So cards like Lodestone Golem and Wormcoil Engine are going to deal damage. If you block them, you're stuck with the consequences.
Death and Taxes does also have this particular list in specific has 3 Revokers in main, and the Mud deck uses a lot of activated abilities in the form of, Planeswalkers, the Metalworkers even, the Artifact mana out of Grim Monolith. There's a lot of activated abilities in the deck. And so, that can help shut it down too, and I think gives a huge, edge having sideboard cards in the main deck.
Yeah, revoking a Grim Monolith is probably a good suppression
It doesn't stop the mana, but it does stop...
No, Revoker can stop
Revoker, mana. That's right. It's not Pithing Needle. Pithing Needle even still would work, it's just it only stops the untap. It doesn't stop the first time.
Pithing Needle can't stop mana abilities. But it can name lands, like fetch lands, for instance. Revoker, on the other hand, can name mana abilities or cards with mana abilities. Boy, there's a start.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Speaking of, we have Ancient Tomb into Grim Monolith into Transfer. That's going to be a hard start because he doesn't even have the Aether Vial down yet. So, everything's going to be 3 mana from this point on.
Which, given the deck Death and Taxes, he's not actually going to play anything until turn 3 if he has 3 lands.
Right, exactly. They may not even see because you don't want to see that many lands. So the turn 1 Wasteland strategy isn't even that great right here because even if you Wasteland him and try to keep him from playing stuff, he has a lot more lands and can get a lot more mana faster than the Death and Taxes deck. Although he just plays Ancient Tomb Pass, so maybe he's low on action in his hand. He's really champing out.
It could also be
untapping the Grim Monolith here.
Yeah, and just make a 7 or 8 mana play on turn 2. Turn 3, I mean.
Yeah.
That's probably a good way to win a game.
So yeah, it looks like he's going to go for the untap, even though it costs him 4 life. He's killing a lot of himself here. But
at this point, he's got to know he's against either Miracles or Death and Taxes. So
right.
So the life loss isn't a big deal because the deck has no reach. His opponent has no reach then. And by he, I mean Wes has no.
Speaking of, check this out. He just wastelanded him. So now this is going to be an extra turn without a plays. Although once again, Wes still does not play anything. A lot of his deck is 7 or less. So I guess he's digging for a threat. Maybe he has a bunch of chalices, stuff like that. Here we go. We might see a play here.
5, 8.
Ugin maybe. Oh, Sundering Titan. Cut him off another land. Good lord.
Yeah, if you keep this going long enough, it doesn't matter if you only nuke 1 land at a time. With the Trinisphere, Jordan can't actually cast any spells.
Actually looks like Jordan has a land in hand, so this Sundering Titan might just go all the way on the damage beats here.
Well, let's see.
He's moving to discards.
If he hits his next 2 land drops, even then he can't stop the Titan in time, can he?
No, I don't believe so.
He would have to have a Swords to Plowshares, which is going to set him back a land again.
And it has to be a non-basic too, because he's sitting on a wasteland, so they have to be 3 straight planes in a row. And that just gives there's nothing, right?
Nope, that is literal 0 outs. And that wasteland he drew isn't going to do it. Nope. I believe this game is over. It's just a
matter of going through the motions and hitting him with the Sundering Titan, because I think he's flat out of outs.
Just like that, Mud is going to have game 1. Poor Jordan's going to have to go to the sideboard and hope he has.
Like I said, Aether Vial does you a lot of good once it's on the table. I think he's sitting on, 2 or 3 of them in his hand. He just flat couldn't cast them. The play draw was very, very important here, because, he can't even swords it.
Well, like we mentioned earlier, and he just scoops them up. Yeah, like we mentioned earlier, play draw is huge for Mud.
Right,
It really wants
absolutely.
to have that turn 1 taxation or chalice.
Chalice would be super, super good against the Death and Taxes deck. So,
Well, first, before we go to the sideboards, let's talk again about our host and sponsor, JC's House of Cards, located out in Madison, Alabama. Yeah, they have everything: legacy staples, standard staples, modern, sealed, and miniatures and other card game trading card games. If you're into them and you play it, check out JC's House of Cards. They've got it all. I know you play there pretty regularly,
I
right,
do.
Drake?
Yeah, they have nightly events. They always have some kind of Magic tournament going on. They also have Force of Will and some even like the lesser known games like HeroClix and stuff like that. D&D, they do some of those. The D&D encounters, they do it all down there. It's a great shop, great owner. It's a very good environment.
All right, and they're very graciously sponsoring this event and carrying a lot of the staples for people to get into Legacy. Moving on to the sideboards, you've got Wes's sideboard list there. What do you think comes in? What comes out? What's relevant in this matchup?
Well, ironically, I think Phyrexian Revoker is good against the Death and Taxes deck. You can really shut down like the Aether Vial, stuff like that. Ensnaring Bridge is probably okay. I wouldn't hate it like if they go to strap up like some of their equipments and stuff, but a lot of their creatures actually are low on power and toughness. For the same reason you have Pithing Needle. I think Pithing Needle is also good against, shutting down the Aether Vial is very crucial. Even shutting down like corner case things like Wasteland, cards that are just good against you could be really strong.
Schadenport too.
Yeah, exactly. The Trinisphere is probably fine as well. Also talking, like, I wouldn't hate, like, maybe one orbs. Like, they have a lot of, like, small creatures, and that could cut a damage off, but I think it might be just a little too slow. It doesn't look like he has a lot of sideboard hate for Death and Taxes, but I think he has enough, like, ins that he could be pretty fine.
On the Death and Taxes side, Jordan could arguably bring in the Mangara. The Mangaras, right. I would think he's got 2 Pithing Needles, which aren't of much use. The Mangaras, if you're going to be a slow, long attrition game, they're good. Aethersworn Canonists are terrible. We're not going to see those. The Pair of Council's Judgments is a good, clean answer to anything, even Wormcoil wearing a pair of boots.
Right, absolutely.
Gets rid of those. The 2 Disenchants is 100% coming in because every card in Wes's deck that is not a land is a target for Disenchant. Rest in Pieces, 3 of them here. I don't see much relevant to that. And Ratchet Bomb, although slow, is a good way to deal with a Chalice to set on 1,
right.
Or perhaps some of the other maybe 2 to maybe 3 mana spells.
I mean, even just any Chalice at all, because you just play it and crack it. It's a 0-drop. Also, Disenchant does not answer an Ugin. You got Council Judgment over Disenchant.
That's true. Yeah, you do need those Council Judgments. I stand corrected. The Disenchant is good against almost everything.
Almost all his deck. But as for side outs, I don't know. I'm not sure what's bad. I think Siren Titan's bad against Wes. I can't imagine like Blightsteel Colossus is that great, but maybe it's fine. Platinum Empyrean as well. I don't know. Some of the larger things, I really don't think you absolutely need those. You have enough larger threats that you should be able to overpower pretty much anything they're doing anyway. So I don't know. Maybe just locking up the early game is a little more important.
On Jordan's side, like we mentioned already, Mother of Runes is probably the one match of all matches where she is completely useless, and those 4 can leave immediately.
Right.
I think you could make an argument for boarding out sort of Fire and Ice as well, given that the protection from colors doesn't really do anything, and possibly Spirit of the Labyrinth, given that there's no
they're not drawing cards
brainstorm or extra draw effects.
Well, what do you think of Folly effects? Do you think those are pretty good against? Given that that's what they're doing, I can't imagine those effects are that great. I can see cutting 1 or 2 of those.
It's possible. I think you have enough other things that are worse or equally as bad that you might start with those, but it just depends how much Jordan wanted to bring in.
Right.
It appears both players kept their opening 7, or I didn't see any mulligans anyway, and Jordan's led off with a Plains. Nothing else.
No Aether Vial. I mean, thankfully no Mother Runes. That card's pretty bad, but like no Aether Vial either. That card's pretty strong, so we're going to see what he has. Looks like there's a Stoneforge Mystic. It's a pretty fine play right here.
It's a good start, or as good as Death and Taxes would normally have.
Especially without an Aether Vial.
Looks like you might also have a Thalia.
I think I see a Caracas, so like the Thalia Caracas thing could be a thing next turn. Especially because, I mean, he opened with a turn 1 Cavern. He might not have a lot of lands, so playing Thalia might have some benefits here.
Although he's decided to go with the Stoneforge Mystic, so we'll see what equipment he does want to search up. I imagine at this point the Batterskull is the fastest threat.
Batterskull seems very good. And even late game Batterskull, you can try to make your creatures somewhere close to his creature's power toughness. That way you're not just dead to anything that you can't swing through. So I'd imagine grabbing Batterskull here is pretty good. Oh, he has
he kept the Sword of Fire and Ice
still in his deck. I mean, it can be good. It still gets him dead quick. But, like I said, if he plants a threat in front of it, that can just be pretty hard to get through with the sword versus the Batter Skull.
Right. The protection clause is not affecting the creature is a big loss here. I'm surprised to see that in after board.
And it looks like...
So Wes started off with a cavern. We can assume, like before, it's naming Golem, most likely.
I mean, it doesn't actually matter because, like I said, I don't think we're going to see any mana tides here out of Jordan Har's deck.
No, there's no counter spells to be seen. That said, he's probably still going to name his just out of habit most relevant creature type.
Looks like we got a Glimmer Post. I'm gonna say that name right this time.
Yeah,
I said that wrong a lot of times. Oof.
And there's
I think the Chalice on one here is very strong. Like I said, it cuts the swords off if you play.
Oh, and his draw for turn was an Aether Vial.
Oh my
How
gosh.
timely.
That's brutal. So what do you think? Do you think you plant the sword here, or do you just? I think you have to play Thalia and maybe leave Caracas up, start committing things to the board, but then you can't put the sword in.
Thalia seems like a strong play if you have another land drop, because next turn you can deploy the sword and equip it. And it also is likely to put Wes off of a relevant play for yet another turn.
The sword is just, it looks like he may not be wanting to go with that. The sword, like I said, this is where the sword feels really awkward, is you can't just put a threat on the table right now. You have to kind of spend a turn doing nothing. I think Batter Skull would have been a little bit better. Although if he has Batter Skull in hand, I can't see his hand that well. If he has Batter Skull in hand here, that could be pretty good.
Oh, having the both of them?
Yeah, if he could just plant Batter Skull and then play the sword and equip it, that could be absolutely disgusting next turn.
Yeah, that's 8 damage plus from free cards. Yeah, that would win a game in a hurry. And there's the Saw land. Here we've got
a Metalworker. That's a card, like I said, he can't swords it, but he can actually shoot it with the sword, Sword of Fire and Ice. So he kind of has a soft answer to it by like either he's going to block it or it's going to die to the Sword of Fire and Ice.
Now, and Wes knew that he had the sword, so I wonder if he played it
just to chump block, maybe for
or maybe to force Jordan's hand so that he couldn't do anything else. He's required to equip the sword this turn. As we can see, he's going to miss a land drop, so he's basically spending his entire turn. That Metalworker is effectively a time walk.
Yeah, right? it can act as a pseudo time walk.
Jordan's entire turn.
So, which is fine. I think if you're on the Death and Taxes side of the table, but I think given that he's willing to make the trade, I assume he has better things in hand, and just needs to live the extra turn. But I wouldn't feel terrible about that trade in the Death and Taxes side of the table because I don't think he actually has an answer to it. Like I said, sword just turned off, and there is at least one in his hand, so you can't really stop that from making 1,000,000 mana next turn. So just flat trading an attack step, and your mana for a Metalworker can be fine.
So we've got a Monolith into.
Looks like he's tapping 2 mana. Another Monolith. That's 6 mana. He's gonna cash out that 6 mana right now for a Wormcoil Engine. See, yeah, this is right here is where it's real tough. He's gotta make sure the mana count turns out okay.
And Vesuva enters the battlefield. So we lost our City of Traders, and we're cloning the Vesuva. When it enters the battlefield, it becomes a copy of another land. Mm-hmm. And I'm not sure what he copied.
I think he gained life, so he grabbed a Glimmer Post. He gains life equal number of locusts when you enter the field, so you got 1 life and 2 life. Now he's at 23. It's kind of hard to see that second dice there, but he is at 23, having taken no hits. It looks like he might have actually picked up another Aether Vial. It looks like he does. He has 2 Aether Vials in his hand. So
that Chalice is doing work.
Yeah, I told you. A quick Chalice on 1 can be real tough.
So this is a disenchant, most likely targeting the Chalice.
Which is very strong. It's exactly what you... Now he has a Swords to Plowshares for that Wormcoil. And he's going to get through cleanly with that Stoneforge Mystic.
And the attack. Yeah, this is a good turn for Jordan.
This is a very good turn. I mean, he's going to beat a lot of life, but he gets a pretty big point swing. He gets another card. And most importantly, he got the Chalice and the Wormcoil cleanly answered off the table. I think that was a very good turn for the Death and Taxes deck.
Another Stoneforge Mystic?
The Stoneforge Mystic. Looks like he has a couple Flicker Wisps in his hand. That card could be relevant for future blockers, stuff like that.
It's also very good against Chalice of the Void.
Absolutely.
Regardless of how many counters it had, it sets it back to 0.
Maybe since he had one in his hand, do you think there was some merit to maybe just playing Chalice that turn? I mean, not Chalice, the Flicker Wisp flickering the Chalice that turn instead of disenchanting it? You might have a better target later. Like, for instance, the Colourful Forge Master could be a little bit better.
Well, it's possible. The problem is you have no way to deal with Wormcoil Engine outside of swords anyway.
That's true.
I imagine...
Yeah, you probably don't want him gaining the 6 life right away and untapping.
Now, do you attack here? I think it's a free attack. Like if he blocks with the Koldatha, they'll just
it's a 3/4. But yeah, obviously if he doesn't block, I don't know. I mean, maybe there's some merit to leaving up it as a blocker. You can do some kind of combo blocks if he for some reason attacks. But he does actually have the 3 artifacts to sack, so that could be really problematic for your next turn. I'm not sure what the worst case scenario for him is. I mean, maybe grabbing something like Blightsteel Colossus, Platinum Imperium, Steel Hellkite, obviously one of the bigger threats. But, Swords to Plowshare still pretty cleanly answers a lot of those threats. Sundering Titan's is just not that good. It only hits 1 land, so it's going to be kind of hard to find a specific artifact that's really going to get him there. And sacking that much mana and, the card is going to be tough. I think he's probably going to go grab Batterskull with this one. I don't think he has any other equipment in his deck. The GT is probably out of his deck. I don't think that card's
unfortunately, the Stoneforge package is not as effective against Mud as it is against most of the other decks.
Yeah, and we see him grabbing the Batterskull here. Which interestingly, of all the cards, is one of his proxies. I think that's one of the cheaper cards in the deck. But it is what it is. You're allowed to have proxies. It's good to see him making use of that. But
we encourage all of the competitors in this Legacy Huntsville series to come and play, regardless of whether you've got complete decks or not. We give them up to 10 proxies so that they can build decks that they want to, whether it be just to try them out or to finish them off and remain competitive. Whatever it is, just to garner more interest. Wow, there's a third year.
That's got to feel bad. I mean, that lets him actually just cleanly sacrifice all the monoliths for an artifact, so he doesn't have to actually get rid of his Forge Master, which is actually pretty good. You end up losing your Forge Master a lot of times out of the Mud deck when you activate it, but I mean,
usually it's for a win, so it's not as big a deal.
Yeah, so he could go for like an end-of-turn Blightsteel Colossus if he attacks out. He could do like the good old block and then tap sack.
Mm-hmm.
So we could really see some. We could see a game stolen here if some slip-ups are made on the end.
I see Jordan has the Swords to Plowshares though, so that'd be
that's really
a little
tough.
Premature to bring in a Blightsteel.
Unless he taps out or something crazy like that. It looks like he has a second Caracas, which is really awkward here. I think he's obviously on the just put in Batterskull in a turn and then equip it, which is probably fine. He doesn't seem to have much action. Mr. West doesn't seem to have much action, so I think just putting in Batterskull and equipping it is probably a fine turn, although you really have to hope on him fading a couple draw steps. Trinisphere doesn't seem great here.
The Aether Vial is already in play.
Aether Vial, Stoneforge. There's already a lot of ways to cheat everything out. I think that card's a little too late, but it still stops like Swords. He has to leave up all 3 mana for the Swords to Plowshare. So once again, he can go for the steal the game strategy if he still has that Blightsteel in his deck, which I'd imagine he probably does. It can seem pretty good for breaking open the board states like we see here, where it's just clogged up.
Mm-hmm. Aether Vial is going to tick up. Batterskull is on the battlefield now. Ooh. Oh, and we do have a germ token. That's what's his name? Alex Pistecki from the Season 3 Star City Games Invitational winner.
Like I said, I can't see too terribly well. I think probably equipping...
Is that a third Stoneforge Mystic?
It looks like it, yeah.
You could have, if he still has the GT, you could have the full equipment lineup.
I don't think the GT is worth playing the Stoneforge Mystic for. I think equipping the Sword to the Batterskull token is easily the best line of play here.
It does play right into your plan, though, with, what do we have here?
That's a Mirren Crusader. Wow. That's really good with the Sword. But I don't think he's going to be able to get an attack through here. We have no in-turn Godoltha, so he doesn't have any tricks. I don't know. Maybe if he had the Steel Hellkite, going and grabbing a Steel Hellkite and hitting it and then getting it off for 2 would seem very, very strong here.
Taking out all of the
it takes out
the Stoneforges.
The Stoneforges and stuff, and I believe it takes out the token, right? Is it or less?
No, it's equal to.
It's equal to, okay.
So a Steel Hellkite would not be able to get rid of all.
But I mean, you still have the Forge Master to block with. So he must not have that in his deck. That seems like a pretty good... Is that...
West chooses to untap the Grim Monolith before playing a land.
Right. Must have a pretty big play.
Ugin
would be pretty big here, just -2, or I'm sorry, -3, take out just about everything. That would seem really strong.
And there's an end-of-turn Aether Vial for the third Stoneforge Mystic, which means...
Let's see if he
still has it in, he's getting the full package.
Which he does.
He's got all the equipment.
So we're gonna see a pretty big creature here next turn.
Something's getting suited up and ready to rock.
And I imagine it's that Mirren Crusader. I mean, GT, you can get your first hit with your Mirren Crusader, and then before the second hit, right, you can pump it up with the GT.
That's true.
And that's a pretty good play. And
although that GT is not in play yet, so
of course
you would have to have to find another land, I guess. Although I guess he's got another Caracas he could manage.
He just picked up a port off the top of his library, which is rather strong here.
Well, as far as mana production, looks like Wes is way beyond the point where Rashad and Port is going to lock him down.
Oh yeah, no, you definitely want to be able to, I think, activate Stoneforge here, or just cast it. It's really up to you. It doesn't actually matter. And equip the sword to the Batterskull token. I still think that should be a primary part of your play. Start getting some damage through. Basically race like the Ugins, just the big relevant threats that he could have. Platinum Empyrean, where he just says, okay, I'll take all the damage because my life total can't change. There's if he has if West still has some of those threats in his deck, which I'd imagine he has at least one. I don't know why he's waiting so long at his Kadotha Forge Master. Maybe he's looking for the right moment. But I'd imagine you still have one of those large creatures in your deck that you really can just kind of grab and hopefully put yourself in a much better position than he's in right now, just kind of having a 3/5 and a bunch of mana.
Yeah, it looks like the turn was just passed back. The board's getting a little bit cluttered at this point, but Jordan didn't make any plays this turn, just ticked this vial up to 3 and passed it back.
Maybe he's thinking, okay, he still has that Flicker Wisp, so he can get every creature through cleanly next turn. So he can put in the Jite. And like I said, if he doesn't play a creature this turn, he can just Flicker Wisp the Kadotha Forge Master, either forcing the activation or just getting everything through next turn. It doesn't seem like the ideal play, but if nothing else, you can actually suit up the Flicker Wisp, which flies. You can just punch that through.
And with another land here, you can actually put the Batterskull on the Flicker Wisp, which is a real relevant threat.
And if not, you still have the 2 mana for the swords. You get a bunch of damage through, you draw a card. This is all, things you want to be doing. And he just played, I think, his 3rd City of Traders. It's either a second.
Wes has a lot of mana. I don't know what we're going for here, but
ooh, the Spine of his Shaw.
Oh, maybe that's his hesitation to use the Koldathas. He's been waiting to resolve this because that's a much better card to be using in that sacrifice loop. We'll see what Spine of the Ishsaw does target. It looks like it's targeting Aether Vial, which is prompting Jordan to use his Aether Vial.
He's going to flicker the Aether Vial.
Probably to protect it from the
spine. Which, it's not the worst play, but it does reset the counters, which puts you in an awkward spot if you draw, some 3-drops here. It's just like, that's not really what you want to be doing. I think your board state's fine anyway, but it is important to have in the future for, Trinisphere, which is just a problem card still, and all your spells that you can't Vial in. So, I think Vial is important to have for the creatures and the equipping.
So now that we've got a board consisting of many stone forges and an arsenal of equipment weapons, is Jordan ever going to get to attack here?
I don't know. I think, like I said, I think he's waiting for a big swing that the guy can't do too much about. I think he's really scared of this Kadotha activation. He seems to be holding back a lot, scared of some kind of flyer or something. I don't know, some larger creature than what he can suit up, just coming in and absolutely decimating him because of his attacks.
So now the sword is on the Flicker Wisp, and looks like we might be getting a Jite as well. So this is this smells like an attack, right? This is the turn he finally is going to go in and deal some damage.
No, do you see with the Batterskull too? It's just free for life if he doesn't. If he blocks it with the Kadotha.
The only argument against it is if there's a Blightsteel.
Right.
He's tapped down, so he wouldn't be able to answer it otherwise. He would be forced to block with all of his stone forges or something.
I don't know, but there was a line 2 or 3 turns ago where he could have gotten the Blightsteel and maybe West just didn't see it or something. Or, there was some reason he was holding back, like you said, for the Spine of his Shaw or something like that. I don't know. I think there was a moment or two where Blightsteel was as good as it would be now that he would have gone for it. So you can either assume it's not in his deck, or that's not the line he wants to take. Maybe it's in his hand, something like that.
Oh, yeah, that would be difficult. He would need a lot more mana to hard cast the Blightsteel.
He's getting there. He's not too terribly far.
Regardless, Jordan got both of his triggers from the sword and from the Jite. You can see it has counters now, and he drew another Flicker Wisp.
Yeah, that looks like another Flicker Wisp. Which, like I said, he can't Vial it in, which would be great against the Blightsteel Colossus, but because he had to flicker his Vial last turn or have it blown up by the Spine of his Shaw, it's kind of awkward having another Flicker Wisp right here. But nonetheless, I think he's still in a very good position. He has West back down to a regular life total. These Glimmer posts have been keeping him alive for a couple turns.
And his hand is still fairly full. I think he's got a lot of options. This game is looking good. I wouldn't have expected him to be in Jordan to be in such a commanding position, given that West was able to open up into an early Kuldotha Forge Master and a bunch of Grim Monoliths. Like he has plenty of spare mana, but.
And, we were kind of down-talking the sword a little bit, thinking it was pretty bad in the matchup. It seems to be pretty good here. Like, it's very mana-efficient with how it equips. It makes your creatures a little bit larger. It looks like we have a
Wes is going for the
activation that
Kuldotha
turn.
finally.
Let's see what we have out of it.
Not sure what he's getting, but he's going to get his Spine of the Ishsaw back after... Well, he should be back in his hand right now, but... He's resolving the rest of the Kuldotha Forge Master's ability.
Now, Spine of Ishsaw is a card that I typically think is pretty slow in the one matchup. I feel like if I was playing the deck, I would side it out a lot, especially in a matchup like this where they're just committing early.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that would be wrong, especially in this matchup. They have a lot of artifacts and stuff you can blow up with it. It's very strong with the Kuldotha Forge Masters we're seeing here. So it's just a card that I think is a little clunky. But right here, I mean, it looks amazing when you make this much mana. You have a sack outlet. There's the Steel Hellkite.
Oh, and Jordan doesn't have a blocker. All of his flyers are tapped,
right.
So Wes is gonna be able to get in and probably for 2. If I had to guess, it'll take care of the most.
There's some merit to 3 because you can snipe the sword, the Flicker Wisp, and the Mirror Crusader. But 2 would also take out both the Stone Forges, making all his artifacts, I guess, a little bit worse.
It gets the GT as well.
Yeah,
which with enough time will overpower even the dragon.
But the dragon get through again next turn if you go for 3. Otherwise, you can just leave the Flicker on the block. So I think probably going for 3 here is right. But there's definitely some merits to going for just 2.
Well, given that Wes now has the Spine of the Ishsaw in hand, do you think he'll recast it this turn to take out one of the other problematic permanents, maybe the Batterskull or one of the 3s?
I don't think there's anything that pressures him enough that he would really need to do that. As much as he's got, Jordan has a very cluttered field full of relevant threats, I don't think there's enough that's going to kill him next turn. He could be more scared of things like, I don't know, Aether Vials, Revokers. He could be a little bit more scared of cards like that just absolutely shut him down. And so a premature Spine he could get a little punished for. Because I think with the Steel Hellkite, Wes is in a very good position here.
Looks like the Hellkite was resolved for 2 mana.
It looks like Jordan gained the 4 life.
He used the GT counters, and now all of his Stone Forges and the GT are gone. Wes is 7 mana.
So he's going to redeploy the Spine. This allows him to activate Kuldotha Forge Master again. I think you could pretty safely get rid of another Grim Monolith, the Spine, and maybe even the Trinisphere. I don't think the card's doing too terribly much at the moment.
Not anymore, no.
So, it allows him to get another Kuldotha Forge Master and then Spine again next turn, which is just, that's as good, if not better. But we'll see what he wants to target with the
7 mana Vindicates are still Vindicates, huh?
They sure are. Especially when you can 7 mana Vindicate every turn. It's pretty good. Just, of course, requires the 7 mana.
This is shaping up to be quite the grind fest. I don't know. I honestly can't say who I think's winning this right now.
Well, Death and Taxes is a deck that typically wins grind fests. It's a deck that is very well designed to grind. They have cards like Richardon Port, Wastelands, a bunch of prison effects.
It looks like he opted to destroy the sword with the Spine of the Ishsaw, not the potential blocker. See, I wondered if he might go for the Flicker Wisp, because then the Hellkite could deal with the rest of the 3s.
Well, I think that shows him wanting to activate Kuldotha Forge Master again next turn.
That's true.
With him not... Basically, he might be trying to keep him from drawing swords to Plowshares.
Sure, for the dragon.
He doesn't want him getting hits in, which we know Jordan already has a Swords to Plowshares, which is going to cost him 3 mana. But it's still very powerful in the face of a Steel Hellkite you can't block.
It's true.
And that Vial getting up to 2 now, you can get your Thalia and cards like that in, which can make the Spine a little bit worse. I mean, that Grim Monolith is tapped. If West plays another land, the City of Traders is coming off the table, so it can be pretty not profitable. So if you can just kind of cut the Spine off, you can almost prison the Mud deck out, And so that there's merits to that, but it looks like we're actually just going to see an Equip here to block.
Oh, well, it gives Vigilance, so he can attack as well.
Yeah, he can attack and block. If West managed to redeploy the Spine next turn, then...
He could take out the rest of his board.
Yeah. But I think he had to pay exact mana without the Grim Monolith for the Spine of Ishsaw. So if the Spine ends up going back to his hand, Jordan can vial in a Thalia and keep that from working as long as he doesn't draw... As long as West does not draw an untapped source for the City of Traders follow-up.
Right.
then that spine's not going to be recastable next turn. He's going to get at least another hit in.
Let's see. Yep, the attack went through, and Wes is not end of turn using his
Kadoltha Forge Master,
Kadoltha
which is
Forge
interesting.
Master.
I think the redeploying spine next turn would telegraph that play pretty well. But if he's not grabbing like a creature or something he's going to attack with, he could still do it main phase and just recast it. That keeps, I don't know, certain cards, I'd imagine like Revoker and stuff like that, from coming in and somehow blowing him out. But I don't know. He might, like I said, not. He's been pretty patient with his Fiddle of the Forge Masters. I don't claim to be a mud expert by any means, but I think I would have been a little bit more aggressive with this Forge Master. But once again, I don't know what his list looks like post board, but I'd imagine I'd be grabbing some bigger threats and just trying to get in there.
Just force it through.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, it's no tinker, but it functions pretty similarly. And
especially with the Spine of Ishtar, you
Yeah.
just keep it coming. And like I said, I don't know too much about Mud, but I respect the patience that Wes has had with his Forge Master. He's played a lot more of the deck than I have,
He's
and I
very
imagine
cautious.
he knows what's going on probably a little bit more than I do here.
yeah, Wes has been piloting Mud for pretty much as long as he's been playing Legacy. I think that's sort of his deck of choice. I know he took it to the Grand Prix out in Seattle, and
He spoke to me, and I think he's actually buying into Death and Taxes. I think that's a deck that he wants to play. He really likes the prison strategies. Yeah, here we go. We see a main phase Kadoltha Forge Master, which is, I think that can be telegraphed pretty well. I don't know what he's grabbing that could get him, blown out by not end up turning it, but it might just flat not matter. He might be waiting to see if Jordan does something aggressive, just waiting to see what his opponent does and maybe play a little bit more reactively. But I don't know. Ultimately, if he's grabbing something that he's not attacking with this turn, then it's fine to main phase it.
Right. At least here you get your draw step first. You have some idea. He gets a Pithing Needle.
Huh.
I'm not sure what he's going to name with that. Obviously, if the ability has resolved, Jordan cannot use his Aether Vial in response. Like if that's what he's trying to name.
Right.
Although I think it's probably more likely he's going to name Batterskull.
So you think maybe he's trying to catch the Thalia here? Or like maybe a Revoker? Like maybe he's trying to catch one of those cards pretty early. That way, if it's a Revoker, he can blow it up and still steal Hellkite. Well, I mean, he can't steal Hellkite this turn, but he can steal Hellkite in the future. If it's, I don't know, like Thalia, he'd be forced to vial it in here, and he can just kind of get rid of it with the Hellkite. Like, it kind of forces Jordan's hand maybe a little bit. Now, unfortunately, there's going to be no real way to know, other than context clues, what exactly he's playing. He named with Pithing Needle. Whoa, he looks like
another Spine of the Ishtar. He's got a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. A single mana floating. I think Wes may have overpaid for this.
I think maybe he has. Yeah, it looks like he had exact mana last turn to pay for it. I'm surprised he couldn't pay for it this turn. Maybe you just attack. I think you definitely still attack 5 here. You can just get 5 damage in. You're not really planning on blocking at any point.
No, and
Jordan's at 26, so that's pretty high.
Yeah, and Wes is down to 11. There is some merit to holding back to block here. I think.
Yeah, it's probably going to have to be the play, and that is what Wes elects to do as he passes the turn back.
It looks as though the Pithing Needle did indeed name Aether Vial.
Yeah, otherwise I think we would have seen Nathalia come in. Given that both your threats are on 3, a 2-drop can be important to have.
So there's the swords on the dragon. This leaves Wes without a blocker or a threat for that matter. So.
He does gain 5 life, which is important given that he's about to take something like 7. There's no more equipment to boost it up, but still, like a Mirror Crusader on its own and a Flicker Wisp on its own is still a lot of power. That can get you dead pretty quick. If he just plays like a creature here, which I don't think he can, given that Trinisphere is in the play. So and Pithing Needle's named Aether Vial, so he's not gonna be able to make this a 2-turn clock to where he's dead next turn. But it's definitely still a lot of pressure.
And it is a 2-turn clock. Well, it effectively shuts off Wes's Ancient Tomb.
And a card I'm kind of surprised to see in post board is Mirror Crusader. It's got a lot of clock to it. It gets opponents dead quick. But Wes isn't playing a black or green deck, which is usually what you see it good against. The Shardlesses deck like that.
So there we've got a Chalice for 1, which is a little late to the party when you're staring down.
Yeah,
this army of.
This is where I think sacking the Kadoltha Forge Master was a little hasty. You still have a lot of artifacts you want to get rid of. I don't think the Aether Vial was the biggest threat on the table. I don't think that was the card you were the most scared of. I mean, you were still scared of a lot of his threats, as we see the creatures that were already on the table still killing them. I think maybe grabbing Pithing Needle was a little aggressive, and maybe even just not what you needed there with Cuddle Off Forge Master. Because like I think sacking Chalice and Transfer here would be really important.
Yeah, I'm not sure what he might have wanted more, but it looks as though, yeah, I agree. He could have hung on to the Forge Master and gotten more value out of cycling the Spine of the Ishsa around, and maybe cleaned up some more of these creatures. As it is, I don't know if Wes has short of like an ensnaring bridge. I don't know if he's got a way out without.
Yeah, this looked pretty bad for the Death and Taxes player a little early on. The mud deck got out of the gate pretty quick, but I mean, the mud deck just kind of fizzles, and this is what you see with mud, and it's the problem. I guess the problem with mud, why you don't see it played a little bit more, is it can lose to itself pretty hard. Like I said before, it relies a lot on its opening hand, and its opening hand being quality. Even when your opening hand is good, and here we see picking up cards to the second Flicker Wisp is just too quick of a clock. I think you end up fizzling, and a deck like Death and Taxes that's designed to grind and have all of its cards be relevant can just end up, stealing games that you started out looking very good.
Pretty strong. Well, we're going to take a minute to talk about the next installment in the Legacy Magic the Gathering Tour here in Huntsville. It's January 9th at the Deep Comics and Games. That's downtown, or sort of downtown Huntsville. We're going to have a 12 o'clock start time. It's the standard $10 entry fee. All of the entry fees go towards the prize support, so there'll be Legacy staples and mostly just Legacy staples and other Legacy relevant cards. So come on out and join us on January the 9th. Looking at the sideboards again, I can't imagine much is going to change.
Right.
They both had their pieces that they wanted. The Jordan, it was obvious he had the Council's Judgments in, and
the Disenchant, we saw one of those.
The Disenchants. So I think he's set up to fight the grindy match and get out of the lock pieces. And
we got to see Pithing Needle out of West, and it was obviously a card to prioritize highly. I mean, he sacked three artifacts, and out of all the artifacts in his deck, he grabbed Pithing Needle. So that probably speaks to how powerful the card is in the matchup if you just hard draw it. But if it's worth tutoring with a bunch of higher costed artifacts. Looks like West is going to take a mulligan though. And with West being on the play, I think it's kind of bad news for the Mud deck. Once again, it relies on its opening hand. Its opening hand has to be quality, where the Scry helps it a lot. But being on the play, not getting the extra card can be a game swinger. So let's have a look at a 6, see if that's a little better.
Now that said, if it looks anything like his game 1 draw, where he's a Chalice into a Trinisphere or into Lodestone Golem, something like that, he could really put the clamps down early. West is going to keep. And his Scry stays on top. That's a good sign for him.
Must have been a pretty good one, too. He didn't think too long about that one. Jordan kept his 7, so let's see what the turn 1 looks like from... Oh, wait, maybe he's still thinking on the Scry. Never mind, that went to bottom. He was just considering it. I'm sure that was communicated well during the match.
Hopefully. These players, again, most of the players at these events know each other pretty well, so there's a little more casual feel to the tournament than you would see at a much more competitive... What was that, a Vesuva?
That's a Cloud Post. So he's going to have 4 mana next turn. That's if he doesn't play another Post or a Locust land. He's going to have a lot of mana. Hopefully he has some follow-up. We saw him, he has 2 mana that turn. He didn't play a Chalice, so he must not have that. He probably has higher on the curve payout cards. And Jordan didn't have the turn 1 Aether Vial. So this game is still pretty open. Although having Port here and not playing things, I think a Port can be a little brutal for the Mud deck during this turn, especially if he's out of lands. But we'll see that in a moment, see how good the Port was here, and whether or not...
Looks like he's also got a Wasteland in hand, so he could actually really suppress the mana development of the Mud player.
Especially with the Cloud Post way of getting mana instead of Soul Lands. Like, we just saw Soul Land deployed, but Cloud Post requires other Locust Posts, etc. lands to be in play. And if you can Wasteland them off those, you can cut them off with a lot of mana with one Wasteland, and it can feel like a double Stone Ring.
West drew a Grim Monolith for the turn, or at least I assume he did since he didn't play it last turn, and still has no follow-up with 5 mana available.
That's it's tough, but it's going to help his mana situation for next turn.
Jordan opts not to go with the Wasteland.
Not sure. He must need the second white this turn. We might be seeing like a a Flicker Wisp, something like that. We might see maybe a
Angara.
creature in like a Swords being held up for like a larger threat that you don't want to have to deal with next turn. Ooh, a Revoker. That's pretty
Revoker
good.
can actually shut the Grim Monolith off. That's a good call. Although I still think it would have been better to play the Wasteland at this point.
I agree. Wastelanding like a Vesuva. I don't think you want to wasteland the City of Traders because if he plays another land, that just sacks itself.
Sure.
So I think you just want to cut him off the posts, leave him at 3 mana, and then like that's it. Like you have 3 mana for next turn. For as a mud deck, that's gotta feel pretty bad. Instead, he untaps here with basically
6 mana
still
available.
6 mana. So I think the Wasteland would have been a little bit stronger, but I think he's a little more scared of the creature he's gonna play this turn, which is a Wormcoil. So he's gonna be able to fire off a sword.
Oh, he has a Swords to Plowshares. Okay.
On the Wormcoil. So we're going to see West go to 26. You can see the little dice there representing. And Jordan's going to go ahead and start his turn. You can get a good look at the draw. I'd imagine the Wasteland probably has to come down here. He's going to swing 2 first before taking care of business. You know, he's not going to play a sword and equip, GT and equip. We saw GT in the deck post board, so you could have played it and equipped it.
Hanging on to the equipment, although I don't know how super relevant the GT is in the post board game, well, in any of the games for that matter.
Yeah, this is not really a traditional creature deck.
So he opts to go with Caracas this turn. Looks like Jordan has all sorts of lands this game.
He does have the GT. He just maybe that's not what he wanted to do.
A little unconventional to play it post combat, unless he doesn't.
Maybe he's going to play another creature.
Or just holding on to the port activation.
Yeah, the port activation's fine. As you said, I think the Wasteland's still a little bit better. And tapping the post is right if he plays another Locust and another post.
Another one would make more mana than the Soul Lands. And like you noted, the Soul Lands that one has to be sacrificed to be played. The City of Traders has to be sacrificed to be played another land, so.
I think, here's
like
a Wasteland.
He just did, there's 5 mana and the Forge Master.
So let's see.
We don't have enough artifacts to use them, but it is a blocker, and it effectively stops the GT at this point as well, because you don't want to swing your Revoker naked with just the GT into the.
So we're gonna see. A Flicker Wisp. That's pretty strong here. Flicker Wisp.
He's gonna reset the Revoker
to get the Forge Master. Although I still think Wasteland was right here. It hasn't super mattered because he's been tapping all his mana every turn and porting him. But I still think the turn 2 Wasteland, I don't know what land he's scared of. That Wasteland he's just been sandbagging it, keeping it in his hand. I don't know what land he's scared of, but I think the Wasteland should have probably been deployed a couple turns ago. And even we've seen him play literally any land but the Wasteland. So I imagine he's got to be holding it for something. And we get to see him grab the sword here. He probably has the Batter Skull in his hand, given that GT is one of the worst equipments. And I think...
And we know he naturally drew that.
Yeah. And the Batter Skull is probably a little better here. You can probably...
Our Revoker's going to re-enter the battlefield at the end of the turn, and he's naming...
the Forge Master. And you can't activate response because there's no artifacts. But that does allow him to get a little bit more mana for next turn. Let's see if Wes has a pretty good follow-up play now that he gets all his mana.
8 mana. That's a solid...
And I think... Ugin here would be very strong. I'm not sure if that's still in his deck. I think cards like Ugin and even all his dust I could kind of see. I mean, you just slam that on white. That can get rid of a lot of the cards that matter on his board. Well, of course, it doesn't hit a lot of stuff too, like Aether Vial, Revoker, some of the better cards in the matchup don't get hit by it. But yeah, see as we go.
There's Ugin.
So he managed to get 8 mana to play Ugin.
I imagine this is going to be a -3 to get rid of most of the board.
That's true. Yeah, there we go. We can see the Ugin, it's not going to die to that Revoker, even with the GT equipped. And it's also going to force him to hardcast the sword. Now, if he plays and equips the sword, I think he can kill an Ugin next turn. But he loses his Revoker in the process, and actually he would just block. So this Ugin's going to be hard to take care of. So we should see a Wasteland here. I don't think Death and Taxes needs 6 mana. He's drawing a lot of lands. But we should be able to see a Wasteland here, pour it on the upkeep, cut him down off a lot of mana.
It depends if he wants to go for the sword or not.
That's true. Like I said, the sword just can't feel great here. Trading your Revoker for a Forge Master that can't even be activated just is not really the feel goods.
I don't like Jordan's position. At best, he can make an equipment and equip it, or I'm not sure what else he's got, but it just doesn't feel like he has enough mana, despite having 7 mana. Oh, wow, he did have the Batter Skull in hand already, so he's hard casting that.
I imagine he can play and equip the sword next turn, which puts him in a better position. But he is going to lose his Revoker or the token. Wes could just say, okay, that's fine, 0. Leave my Ugin where it is.
The converted mana cost of that token is 0.
And then we do see Jordan fire off his wasteland aggressively. Like I said, I think that's a little late. I think it would have been a lot stronger turn 2, but he is
certainly
keeping him cut off mana.
stymieing this development would have been a lot more useful.
Mm-hmm. Like I said, Ugin was a powerful play there, and we got to see exactly that. And so now the Mud deck has a chance of getting back just off the back of Ugin. Because if you can ult an Ugin against this deck, like it doesn't matter how much mana you have, you're putting all your threats into play.
Looks like the Ugin is ticking up, going to take out the Revoker, which turns the turns the Koldath the Forge Master back on.
He still needs a third artifact, which we hopefully will see here. Yeah, we see a Metalworker, which given the mana situation is probably not super relevant. You probably just want a free card off of it. You know, whatever artifact in your deck is relevant.
Actually, at this point, I don't know what is in Jordan's hand, but
oof, another land. That's a lot of lands.
He's drawn a lot of lands this game, but if Jordan doesn't have a relevant mana-costed threat, well, that sword's not going to do it. For instance, he could just find the Blightsteel Colossus.
Right. I mean, he does actually up for swords though, so that could be a little punishing if he goes aggressively grabs a Blightsteel and
I'm sure there's. What's Jordan have? One card left?
It looks like, yeah, he has one card in hand. He's drawn, like I said, he's drawn a lot of lands, played him every turn, and then Ugin's hit him for the 2.
How many counters does Ugin have on it?
It looks like we're looking at 7.
So this Batterskull attack would not be lethal?
-3. To Ugin? Yeah, it would be. If the entire thing connects to Ugin, it should be lethal, because it should be the 4 + 2 off the sword, +2 damage from the shock.
No, the trigger doesn't activate if you attack
that's right. It doesn't hit the
Planeswalker.
player. You know, you're right. So yeah, that wouldn't be.
That's
lethal.
only a 6 power attack against the 7 loyalty Ugin, which means Ugin would only go down to 1 counter.
I still think you have to attack Ugin here.
Sure, yeah, certainly.
But like I said, Ugin surviving is really bad because next turn he just goes 0, goodbye, and you have nothing but equipment and no creatures. And if you go, bounce Batterskull, replay it, you're just
looks like he opted to block and then activated his Koldath the Forge Master. So we'll find out what he's going for here. I think without a Swords to Plowshares, the Blightsteel would be lethal, because this is on Jordan's turn, and the attack back should be.
I imagine it's probably worth going for. Yeah, it's probably worth going for. If he has the swords, he has it. If not, I mean, you're not in a bad position. You still have an Ugin,
yeah.
And that's still going to get you out. So it kind of says the okay here, have it line. And if he has it up, he's representing it. Have it.
Now, it's worth noting Jordan did tap his mana correctly, because if he had left any of the non-basics, the Wasteland would
have brutalized him there. But he can block.
Now, let's see if Wes will commit. Yep, he zeroes the Ugin to take out the token.
It's only Vrynwing Mare. So that's the match.
Wes takes this one 2-1, and Mud has defeated Death and Taxes.
And that just really shows the power of Ugin. It's just an insanely powerful planeswalker and great addition to the deck.
Legacy, Modern, it's good everywhere.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Any format you can resolve it in, it does great work. Anyway, that'll do it for round 5 of the Legacy Huntsville tour. And when we come back, we'll be taking you to the quarterfinals, our first round of the top 8. So we'll see you then.